Hello everyone, Charlotte here. I hope you're all well. Myself and Mark Bradley, who is alongside me here, who many of you probably met before, certainly heard speak at our club conferences and various In the Box Extra Time episodes. But for those of you who are new to the programme, Mark is the lead behind the professional service that we offer around the fan engagement experience. So I will let Mark introduce himself and lead this short session around the fan experience. So over the summer, we created a little series to explain what fan engagement means, what a fan engagement experience assessment means. And now we want to take this opportunity to speak to you directly as club consultants to bring you up to speed with the themes, the observations that are going on across the country, offer you some insight so that when you're speaking to your clubs and you're delivering your reports to them, you can really advise them on some key action points to help improve what they're doing. And really just, again, perhaps fill in any holes in your knowledge and understanding of this amazing professional service, because I think it is one of the real pluses of the club consultant program. I would say that because I'm the marketing theme lead and it's something I care passionately about. But yeah, this is directly for you as our club consultants. So please, listen in, take some notes, but rest assured, if you do have any follow-up questions, you can contact myself and Mark. We'd be happy to answer them. So without further ado, Mark, thank you so much for doing this, because we had a conversation at the start of the season after you and your team had done so many assessments across the country for the club programme. And I kind of was picking your brains and we were having a really fantastic conversation. We thought, well, why not take that conversation and now share it with the club consultants? Because there are so many things, there are so many challenges, but there's also so many opportunities for our clubs on the programme to strengthen here.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, I mean, everything you said is true. You know, that we've had nearly 2 whole years of assessments now. So we started at the beginning of 2022 with the aim of covering initially 250 clubs in the first 5 years. We're now up to 72. Effectively, that's a year and a half's assessments. And like you said before, it's a really good time to pause to kind of look at what picture is emerging. Because, from half a dozen, it's not clear. But after 72, there's a number of themes that are coming out. And I think for the consultants, it'd be interesting just for me to go through them, because it'll help them with the planning, but it'll also help them it'll help them know that these are not just common to that one club, but these are opportunities, these are strengths, whatever they may be, that actually, apply, across all of the clubs. So just let me just get this little presentation up on screen, and that'll kind of guide us through. And Charlotte, at any point, please ask me some questions. And as I said, this is about the key findings. And I think it's important that we just provide a bit of context first. That when we work with elite clubs, so when we work with clubs in the EFL, Premier League clubs at that level, it is still hard for many people in that club to pull themselves out from just getting the next game on. And reflection is so important when you work at a pro club. And for us, where our volunteers are running the clubs, it's even more important, but, more difficult to take that time, because as you all know, there is so much that needs to go on. And we're counting on the support of people who usually do have another full-time job and are giving their evenings and their weekends. But we all love football. And I think we all owe it to ourselves to do everything we can to help the clubs to become more sustainable. And of course, winning. We're recording this webinar just after the final qualifying round of the FA Cup, where the first round has now been drawn. And we've got some really exciting fixtures there. And of course, a lovely cup run will add hundreds and potentially thousands to your attendance. But we're looking at the medium and the long term here. What can we do to take control of attendance and actually increase that so that more people are coming early, more people are spending money on our refreshments in the bar, buying programs, raffle tickets, whatever we do. And there is, of course, a very clear link between the quality of the matchday experience and the likelihood of people not just coming back, but telling more people about it. That's pretty clear, Charlotte, isn't it? That from your experience. So let me just go through what we're going to do in this short session is just tell you a little bit more about the program. Then we're going to look in order. First, we'll look at strengths, and then we'll look at some of the areas where there's an opportunity to improve. And then we'll also ask that question, just how high is the profile of the matchday experience in the clubs that you're serving as a consultant? We think that is really important. That's absolutely key. We know, and I think it's just obvious from the 20 years that our little organization has worked in football, that the clubs that actually find the time to reflect, to look on data like this, and then use that to inform their planning, are usually the ones that are delivering the best practices that we can all learn from, and seeing the benefits in terms of the number of people coming to games. I mean, in terms of the rationale, this is it here. This is something that many of you will be aware of if you've worked in the service industry. And, of course, this is where most people work these days. We're serving somebody. And we know through the Net Promoter scheme, which first emerged, I think, in the late 80s, early 90s, as a way of measuring the impact that the quality of the service you provide has on the bottom line. That we're really interested in the two green fellas on the right here. The people who really love the experience, who really feel valued, who really feel looked after, who have the best possible experience, they do things completely different to any other person. So the person who gives you a 7 or an 8 on a survey, if you're a supermarket or if you're, some kind of online retailer, if people are giving you 7 and 8 out of 10 in response to the question, how strongly would you recommend us? There's no reliable data out there that proves that they will remain loyal customers. But we know in the general service world that those people who we call promoters, those people who feel really engaged and personally valued and have the best possible experience, and that includes when something goes wrong, it being really well rescued, they exhibit all of these different behaviors. And that's what we're trying to do. That's what we've been doing as an organization for 20 years. And by focusing on thinking about this in the context of football, you can really make a difference. Let me give you an example. In the 3 years before we started the Family Excellence Scheme in the EFL, junior season ticket sales were flat, 0.5%. So in 3 years, if there were 200 in 2004, there were 201 in 2007. Yet in the first 10 years of the Family Excellence Scheme, thanks to clubs reflecting on the family experience and what they could do to improve it, junior season ticket sales rose by 45%. And, if that doesn't tell you that it's worth reflecting on something, then I don't know what does. So that's the context. I think that's really important. We're not just trying to deliver a match day experience. We're not even trying to deliver a good match day experience. We're trying to deliver something which really makes people engaged. And that's really easy for us, because we know that we have so many assets in the National League system. We have our legendary intimacy, getting close to the players, listening to what the coach is saying, talking to players after the game, usually being able to park within like 50 yards of the pitch, which in football higher up the tier is nigh on impossible. Now, if you go to a League Two or even a League One game, you're going to have to pay to get into the lounge. It's hospitality. It's not at our level of the game. It's actually part and parcel of the experience we offer. And there's much more. Locally sourced, freshly cooked food, seeing your mates, being able to change position around the pitch, etc., etc., etc. The list is long. We have so many natural assets in our game that me talking about sustainability in a general sense is simply helping the clubs to connect those assets to increasing attendances, and then it becomes much more simple. Overall results to date. Now we're going to look at this by touch point. For those of you new to the program, we look in particular at 8 touch points. Now they represent the fan journey. They are sequential, most of them, not all of them. Obviously, social media can be something which is useful for the fan at the start of the journey, but also on the match day itself, and even perhaps afterwards, telling people about the next game. And also people, the most important one, because they're there when you arrive on the day, they're there serving you, you talk to them, they're looking after you, they're kind of a presence all of the way. And of course, as you can see from this, I've marked the 3 highest scoring touch points in green. And it will not surprise you to learn that those traditional assets of, shall we say, non-league and community football have come out really strongly. We've done 72 fan experience assessments to date. And as you can see, people is the strongest. Now, that shouldn't surprise anybody, because that's one of our intrinsic strengths. The people that you're serving as consultants are giving up so much of their time. They're devoted to football. They're devoted to their club. We're delighted to see that it's come out really strong. Of course, it could be higher, and we'll talk about that in a little while. But those natural assets came through very strongly. And guess what? Refreshments. Anyone who follows at Footy Scran on Twitter will know that there's been a massive community club takeover in terms of what you can see. I've got a couple of examples to show you later as well. And of course, travel. And I never underestimate how important it is to handle travel well, especially if you want to grow your attendances. By definition, people coming to their first game will not be entirely familiar with where you are, where to park, what time to get there, does the bus run past the ground, is there a secure cycle park, etc., etc. Now, having that information and making it clear to everybody is a massive benefit. You only need to do it once. It's not a regular job. It doesn't have to be done for every match day. It's just having that information that makes the last mile of a new fan's travel to the ground really easy. And then we look at the 2 areas in red. Now, it should be said that the reason that merchandise has scored so low, which is kind of just over 4 out of 10 on average, is largely because 28% of the clubs that we've assessed didn't have any retail offering at all. And by that, I mean nothing behind the bar, not a little trestle table. You know, we don't expect a Step 6 club to have a full-blown retail operation. But by addressing that and helping the clubs to understand how important it is to have an opportunity to buy souvenirs, because there's a big ground hopper movement out there that want to collect a pin badge, want to buy a mug, want to buy a scarf, etc. But there are also kids who want to wear those colours. You know, I remember in the past, Morpeth Town up in Northumberland, they used to give free entry to kids. Or they may still do. This was several years ago, but free entry to kids who came to the game wearing their club colours. What a great way to get kids from your coaching schools to come to games, by making it free for them, especially if they're wearing the colours. But the one that's come out, I guess, is the biggest area of concern is first impressions. I'm going to go into this in a little bit more detail so you can see where I'm coming from. So strength, as I say, people. What we're seeing is a lot of care taken with what we're seeing with people is a friendly, welcoming environment. A couple of our assessors have been spotted by the club chairman or the chairperson or somebody who's a regular volunteer. They're approached, they chat to them, they tell them about the club. And I mean, how can somebody not just mark that as high as you possibly can? Oh, excuse me. Because they feel just so welcome. But it is important, though, for new fans to recognize that if you're new, if you're going to an event for the first time, let's just say you're going to a party with a friend, you don't know anybody at the party and nobody speaks to you. How do you feel? You generally, you probably won't speak to your friend again for a little while, but you don't feel valued, you don't feel connected, you don't feel part of things. The clubs that score highly on people are conscious of that. If they see a new face, they make an effort to speak to them. Because look, if you say, is this your first game? If it isn't for somebody, they're hardly going to be upset by that. They're going to see that, the club's been really conscious about caring for people. And of course, so it is really important when you're working with your clubs to highlight the contribution that a friendly, proactive team can make. And of course, Matchday Hosts, that's something else I wanted to talk to you about. It seems that, we know that volunteering is a challenge, getting people to volunteer at the club. But I think one of the lesser known vacancies, or the thing I hear talked about the least, is probably the most important role out there. do excuse me, autumn is here. And that's the role of the matchday host. Now, I know at the clubs where they're scoring highly, everyone sees it as their role to welcome people, to create a great first impression at the car park, to be friendly and, how are the family? How are you getting on? Great to see you again at the turnstile. And then, of course, to be as friendly and approachable as you possibly can inside. But I do think as consultants, you really should consider encouraging clubs to identify an individual who perhaps has that personality. He or she is someone who is very visible on a match day and could actually just consider that and take the opportunity to walk up to groups who might look like they're here, all the time. Obviously, it's difficult. If you've got 2,000 extra people coming to an FA Cup first round tie, you're not going to be able to speak to them all. But just being present, I think that's really important. I think on refreshments, we talked about footy scrum before. There's clearly an interest. There's clearly a rising interest in actually going to get freshly cooked food that's often locally sourced by people who are doing the job for the love of it, and that's really important because increasingly, certainly you'll see in higher tiers now, there's a lot more fan zones outside grounds because they recognize that generally fans don't particularly enjoy concourse food. So we have that advantage, and as well, just doing that well is really important. And we have several clubs. I've got to take my hat off to Staplehurst Monarchs for that wonderful chicken burger there, which was fantastic. Our assessor had that quite recently, and Staplehurst report will be heading your way at the end of this next list of assessments. Again, the value of friendly people. I've shown this picture before, but these were the two fellas at AFC Portchester. When you're greeted by two fellas like that, they were friendly. To be fair, you look at me, I look more intimidating than those two guys. So, they were just wonderful. And of course, this again, just going back to Staplehurst, little things like this are really important. Letting people know that food is locally sourced, etc., etc. The local bakery, a local business, that's really important. That's our role as consultants, is to help clubs to reinforce the position they have in the local community. And simply by telling people where the food comes from and who they are supporting locally, you'll probably get half a dozen people thinking, I like that, I'm coming back, I'm buying that stuff.
Mark, sorry.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
Hey, just before we moved on to the weaknesses and opportunities as well, on the subject of people and matchday hosts in particular, I know we've got a lot of savvy club consultants that are very good at sourcing funding. And the reason why I mentioned funding is we talk about the power of football being a community catalyst and the opportunities that football clubs can offer to perhaps some of our more vulnerable members of society. And I'm sure there are club consultants who are particularly aware of the challenges around mental health, isolation in the elderly. There could well be means of being really, really unique and inventive with your way of engaging with matchday hosts. Could you reach out to some local community groups or I just think that there's a real opportunity, particularly with the elderly who love their opportunities to be sociable, and it's really important that football offers an outreach to them. So again, that could be something that people around the country could see if there's perhaps funding to get people involved, but base it around perhaps a group like that in terms of a social cohesion program. You never know. And then just this slide here I love, because the sourcing of food locally, I think it's important to highlight because it links in with the marketing theme lead as well. USPs, every club on our program will have something unique about them. And what I love about this example here is that when we're going and sitting down with our clubs with this report and going through it and taking out actions, that right there is a 5 to 10 minute job of just hopping on Word. It doesn't cost a lot of money, and there you go. On top of that, some of these businesses, these local businesses, they might have point of sale items of their own that are branded as well. So always worth advising that. But I just wanted to make those quick points before we moved on.
No, I think they're points, and they're both very, very well made. And I'll actually come on to that second point you made, Charlotte, about the fact that a lot of these jobs are just one-offs. You do them once and then they're done, and maybe only get updated once a season. So as I say, coming to the kind of the penultimate part of this short webinar, Where are the opportunities? After 72 of our fan experience assessments, looking at every touch point from someone new to the club, what are we finding? And of course, we said that retail was one of those issues. 28% of clubs don't have a shop. Now, I think it's important to recognize, as I said before, we're not looking for a full-blown retail operation. Sure, some of the clubs have that, and that's fantastic. But we're just looking for an opportunity to actually generate another form of secondary revenue. And thinking about what are the items that are more likely to be sold. So with your clubs, when you're working with the clubs, just look at what are those key things that should be sold, that could be sold, as you've just said, Charlotte, that underline the club's identity. Is there something so I remember Donny Bell's many years ago going to watch the girls play over at the Keepmoat Stadium, and you could buy a Donny Bell, a bell to ring. It was kind of, no other club could have sold that. It's completely unique to that club. So think about things like that no one else would sell because they're just not relevant to your clubs. I'm now thinking about the famous Ossett United now and the Sheepy Corns, their new nickname to acknowledge the fact that two clubs have come together. I've no idea what a sheepy corn might look like, but I imagine Ossett United is probably thinking about that now. First impressions, though, that's the big thing. And Charlotte, just like you said, we have so many USPs, not just the club as a whole and its identity, but the things that make our game special. So, guys, when you're working with the clubs, just think about how important this is. When someone is going to a club for the first time, they need the basic advice. They need the basic information. That's important. It's not always there. But we also need the clubs to recognize that they have USPs, they have strengths, they have assets that they should be promoting. Now, again, and I have to underline what you said, Charles, so important to recognize you only need to do this once. It's about getting an introduction out there. And I have a couple of examples to show you that are really good there. Promoting what it is that makes your match day special, selling it, marketing your match day. I think it's really important that there is a sense in football sometimes, excuse me, that we build it, they will come. And of course, football is the national #1 sport. It's the beautiful game. But that doesn't mean we don't have to market our club. So I think it's really important to consider things like a match day schedule. When do the gates open? When does the car park open? When's the best time to arrive in the car park so that you can get a space, a free car park, and you can get a space and then come and watch the lunchtime game on TV before our game starts? I think these things are really important. A couple of other points as well. I do acknowledge that the website template for a lot of clubs is not conducive to actually having a center section that says introduction to our club. But then why not use social media? Because social media, after all, is probably going to be looked at more than your website is. So here's a great example from, Croborough Athletic. Just one particular little image, little graphic here, which basically covers everything you need to know about the match day. Has the club's badge on. It can be tweeted. It can be put on Facebook. It can appear on Instagram. It's really, really important. Yes, some work needs to be done to get it right. And as consultants, when you're working with the clubs, get them to try and reflect on what makes the club special, what is special about the match day, and also all of the other strengths that we know our game has. And again, here we've got Rusthall FC. Again, it's lucky now that, I'm so old, I'm pre-Twitter, but, with Twitter now having more characters available, use that as far as you can. And I think this is just fantastic. Everything you need to know just in a short tweet. And Farnham Town, who we love, they do so much good work on social media. I particularly like the example on the left there. The fact that it reflects the colours of the club badge. They've kind of branded their lounge as the clubhouse, and it's clear what TV games you're going to be able to watch there. That's really, really good. And a couple of others as well, with an eye on people who are dog owners. You'll see over on the left, Easington Sports, just on the outskirts of Banbury. They're making it clear that dogs are welcome. We've been through that before. It's a tiny thing, but how many of the population have a dog? You just think about how many people would come to the game. I read about a first round cup tie when somebody took a dog with the away fans and the home team didn't let them go in. And of course, that's been over Twitter with something like 5,000 people commenting and getting angry about it. But again, if you've got the opportunity to welcome dogs and dog owners in, that's great. And of course, always having an eye on the kids. So Charlotte, that kind of brings us to the kind of the penultimate part of this. And it was just to reflect again on the business case for what we call fan engagement. My personal definition of fan engagement is basically it's customer engagement in every other industry. So that's making sure your business is designed to grow customers. Now, so what does that mean for a normal business? Well, it means that you have a unique identity and you curate that very carefully. You make sure people are aware of it. You talk about your identity. It means that you listen. So you're talking to the community, talking to fans, understanding what they like, what they don't like, making it easy for them to provide feedback. Then you've got the fan experience itself, which in any other industry is called service delivery or customer service. And the fan experience is something that's got to engage people at every possible touch point. And then finally, is your people, the most important part. Do people act in a way that is going to encourage more people to come to games? Or are there behaviors, even subconscious ones, like not talking to new fans and slightly excluding them, that could actually unwittingly lead to fewer people coming to games in future? Now, if this is going to happen, as consultants, it's important for you to help that club make fan experience a priority, to build in reflection time. We know that resource does not allow people to be doing match by match, surveys and feedback, but just at regular points throughout the season, what are fans saying? What is the club discussing the feedback they're getting? Just giving that type of support. Ultimately, that's the bigger picture. In all our work in the past 20 years, we know that when fan engagement and the fan experience have a high profile in the club, positive results follow. When they don't, it's very difficult for people who believe in it within the club to get that consistent support and actually make a difference. So I think there's a really big opportunity for you as consultants to help lift the profile of fan experience and help get the sort of results that we had back in the early days of the Family Excellence Scheme. Charlotte, anything else you want to add at this point?
No, I just think it's hopefully been really interesting for people to see those key areas, and even where we have sort of seen the low scores around perhaps retail, to know that there's just opportunity. That's the thing that really strikes me, and the reports are so comprehensive. I would advise the consultants, when they have received them, and there are consultants that have already received reports, to take that opportunity first to read through it before then circulating it with the club. And just as best practice, make sure you have at least an hour dedicated with them to talk through it and lean on some of the examples that you've shown here. But like you say, Mark, having it at the core of the club is so important, because ultimately for sustainability, you have to look at growing those attendances, or certainly, like you were saying at the very start, sustaining them. And I think that's really important, that the profile of the fan experience is the kind of point you make to conclude, because it will ultimately and should be part of the club's DNA to have that at the very heart of it, in the same way it probably does those of their players and the young players at their clubs and so on. I think it's a real recipe for success.
And I think for me, my last word on kind of this, when I look at the results, is that I have heard from a couple of assessors who have friends in the National League system who work at clubs, who say that there are volunteers who don't believe it's their responsibility to be marketing the club, to be doing these things. They're volunteering because they love giving their time on a Saturday to help that club, and they don't see that as within their remit. But arguably, and I think it's more than arguably, I think it is 100% true that the best way a volunteer can support their club is to help it to grow. And I think as consultants, what we're hoping to do with these assessments is to give you a tool that you can use as an opportunity to provoke a discussion with the clubs, and then to look at some of the things that they might want to do differently, and getting them to recognize that putting on a great match day is brilliant. And we're so appreciative of everybody that volunteers in football in the UK to do that. But actually the club's future relies on more than just putting on the game. Putting on the game has got us to where we are. But if we're going to have a sustainable future, we've got to think about how we market our club, how we increase awareness of our club, how we actually, create fan experiences that are going to get people across the town talking, and people on social media. So for me, that's the best way a volunteer can support a club, is by helping it to grow. And of course, a little bit of a summary, just some things to think about, as a consultant, asking clubs when you talk to them, what is your USP? What makes you special? What makes you unique? Whatever it is, history, heritage, etc. And then walking the fan experience. We're very busy as consultants, I know that, but it'd be interesting for you to do that, and for you to encourage a volunteer just to take a half an hour out on a match day and to do that. And as we've said before, one outstanding match day host can actually contribute more than 5 okay volunteers. So think about that role. Think about ways of getting feedback for your clubs. What can they do that's really easy? And then, of course, picking up ideas on away trips. This is something that we've talked a lot about. We know a lot of clubs that we've done fan experience assessments with, who've said some of their best ideas come from away games. When they travel to a different club, they see something different. So sharing best practice is really important. What are other clubs doing in your patch? How can you share them? And of course, we're here too. Charlotte and myself are here to support you with this. If you're looking for some specific ideas of how to address specific problems, we're here to help. My details are there on the screen, and obviously we wish you, every possible bit of luck going forward.
Brilliant. Oh, Mark, well, thank you so much for that. That is a perfect note to end on. And just to reiterate the sentiment there, that Mark and I are on hand to help you and your clubs. If you've had that meeting and passed that report over, and it might not necessarily be a subject, despite listening to this and reading the blogs and all the other assets that you feel comfortable on, myself certainly with support from Mark can pick up the mantle a little bit there, because I know that there's a lot of clubs within the programme where marketing has been flagged as an area for improvement, and probably encompassing that is the key challenge of showcasing what they really, really do. And I think there's lots of easy, quick wins and some sort of longer term stuff to work towards. So we'll finish this little kind of extra time with you club consultants here. And thank you for watching this. Thank you for continuing to engage your clubs with the professional service. And even if one of your clubs doesn't have a report this season, there are still webinars and pieces of content that you can see on the Clubs and Leagues YouTube hub to help equip them with more information. But without further ado, I hope everyone keeps well, and see you at the club conference soon. And like Mark said, please don't hesitate to drop us a line if you want any more help around the fan experience reports.
Okay, good luck, everyone.